is the routine ministerial press briefing at the National Press Center in Abuja, and the Minister of Defense and his colleague at the Ministry of Environment are on ground to account for their stewardship. The Minister of Defense provides an overview of military operations since 2023, highlighting the gains made against terrorists and other criminal elements.
Our intensified operation in the northeast, particularly through collaboration with the multinational joint task force, have significantly weakened Boko Haram and ISWAP. From May 2023 to February 2025, our troops have neutralized 13,543 terrorists and criminals. Arrested 17,469 and rescued 9,821 hostages. Meanwhile, 124,408 Boko Haram/ISWAP terrorist combatant fighters and their families surrendered.
However, the Minister of Information and National Orientation is seeking the cooperation of media professionals in their reportage of terrorist activities.
The media, as gatekeepers and partners in nation building, have a crucial role to play in supporting our military's morale by highlighting their successes and sacrifices. I therefore call on my colleagues, our media professionals and editors, to be discerning in their reportage. We must deny these groups the undue publicity they crave. Honorable Minister.
The Minister of Environment also addressed the gathering, highlighting its achievements, which includes improved forest security and conservation.
We have restored a number of forests. About 80 hectares of the greater landscape have been restored, and we are doing more in trying to bring them back to rotation. And as part of that, we have signed an agreement to join the Middle East Green Initiative, which offers opportunities for environmental conservation and renewable energy.
The Interministerial Press Briefing is the brainchild of the Minister of Information and National Orientation, which provides a platform for ministers to bring citizens up to speed with happenings in their ministries.
Well, quite a lot to talk about. So that was what transpired yesterday at the National Press Center, where these days the Minister of Information brings other ministers to come and talk about their achievement, how it is to keep the country abreast of the strides they're making in their ministries. And yesterday was the turn of the Minister of Defense. And you heard him reel out all of those numbers and figures. 13,543 terrorists neutralized, 13,000 more of them arrested. How many Nigerians have been freed from the clutches of kidnappers and terrorists, etc., etc. And that one, and you could hear people applauding. But that wasn't the situation 2 days ago at the National Assembly when the lawmakers resumed from their recess. We had lawmakers who were very upset about the current security situation in the country. As a matter of fact, the senators, this is what happened in the House of Reps. In the Senate, it was a different kettle of fish. The conversation was as to whether they were going to hold a security summit or not. And the conversation was quite heated on the need or otherwise for the security summit. Well, the majority eventually had their way. It was decided that they will hold a security summit to see how it is that they can, bring things back to normal. The days when Nigerians felt a lot safer going about their business, carrying out, their normal daily chores. So are they contrasting? Is it that, people are seeing things differently, or what exactly is going on? Well, we have this morning Mr. Akande, a former presidential aide, joining us this morning. He's also a journalist. Is it was a journalist? Is it always a journalist?
Always a journalist.
Always a journalist, right? But this is what we're seeing, and I'm sure that as a journalist, you're also trying to make sense of what is currently happening. On the part of the National Assembly members, they are very concerned about the current security situation. As a matter of fact, some of what they said were things that we had not heard before. And on the Senate, for instance, we had conversations around Tucano jets. I think one of the senators, Senator Ningi, was talking about how our Tucanos were on some sort of contract, and after a while we couldn't use them or something like that, and he was wondering why it is that we had to borrow $1 billion we got, you know, from the national coffers. We had to borrow that money to be able to purchase those Tucano jets. And we're wondering, where are they? Why are they not being put to use? And he says, we're constrained by some sort of contract. These are some of the conversations that transpired on the floor of the National Assembly. Yet, the message seems to be a bit different from the Minister of Defense talking about where we currently are with regards to security. How do we make sense of it? It's almost like, whose report do we believe?
Certainly. Yeah, I mean, thank you, Mark. I think quite a few issues. First of all, I think it's good to say that the effort of the information minister to try and bring his colleagues in the cabinet to do this briefing of the press about what they do is commendable. It's a very good thing. I think it's been on it for quite a while. And, you know, one will say that they shouldn't just do it when they are doing anniversary. There should be a regular, continuous kind of stuff like that. It's very good, you know. We had the figures and the report of the defense minister yesterday. Now, coming back to the Senate, you know, to quickly say this is that it's important when people like senators of the Federal Republic speak, it's important for them to go to the very depth of the situation. It's no use, you know, to have information out of the Senate that is not complete. There's no way that Nigeria will have to Kano and there's a contract that says it can't be used. You know, and what we expect the defense headquarters to come and explain exactly what it is. What I suspect is that there will be constraints around human rights abuses, because Nigeria has been called out for quite a number of times on how the military will end up, you know, attacking unarmed civilians.
That's not new.
You know, exactly.
We're constrained in the Jonathan era under the Leahy law, and we understand that's why they refuse to sell us, you know, in the first instance. But when President Trump came in, we were able to purchase those jets. Yeah.
So there can't be an excuse, you know, in my view, for not using the Tucano jets because of no. It's that you cannot use the Tucano jets to commit human rights violations or to attack innocent civilians. And that's why it's important for government to also be very clear in what it's doing. There are certain categories of some of these criminals that we need to correctly designate. You know, what is happening, for instance, in north-central Nigeria, especially in Benue and Plateau, you know, I don't think that we have correctly identified it. It is not farmer-herders clashes. It is not a communal clash. The governor of Plateau State, God bless him. No, his soul is still alive. God bless him for coming out to say that it's genocide. That was very bold of the governor of you know, because genocide has international implications. So if genocide is taking place in North Central, that means we have to identify those people that are committing it beyond the regular communal clashes, you know, beyond, you know, farmer-herders clashes, so that, you know, once you do that, you can then apply all the force that needed to be applied. Now, but if you don't do that, and you say that it's communal clashes, of course, you know, you have to be careful in the way you apply the force, you know, which goes back to what might be some of the limitations around the use of Tucano. But if you are using the Tucano to defend the territorial integrity of Nigeria, to destroy and demolish terrorist agendas, you are completely, you know, free to do so.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, what I think the key question for me is whether the briefing of the Minister of Defense took into cognizance the context in which we're currently dealing with, and the conversations that had happened in the National Assembly prior to his briefing the generality of the country as to the strides that have been made, because these concerns remain. Yes, we have neutralized this many terrorists. Yes, we have arrested this many criminals. Yes, we have freed this many people from the clutches of kidnappers and what have you. Yet the challenges remain. We have lost so many lives as well. And people are wondering, you know, am I safe? Am I still, will I be able to go about my activities without, you know, without my life being cut short all of a sudden, owing to no fault of mine? These are the key questions. So do you think that listening to that briefing yesterday, it took all of these concerns raised by members of the National Assembly, and you know, which is like an expression of what the Nigerian people feel, into cognizance when he gave that press briefing? Well,
you know, so I think you said it, that, you know, who do you choose to believe? There are always two sides to this thing. You know, there's a saying in my language that what you are looking directly in front of you is what, you know, somebody is looking from the back. The minister is trying to say that, look, we're not sitting here idle. You know, this is what the military has been able to do. This is the number of attacks they have accomplished, number of terrorists neutralized and all of that. But that's just one side of the story, and that is where he's coming from. He's coming from the point of view that, look, this is what we have done. But what you said is the other side. What is true is that when you are dealing with this kind of criminals, especially terrorists and these bandits and all of this stuff, they need to just get through and beat the system just once. You, as the government and the security agencies, you need to get it right 100%, which is the challenge and the difficulty. So, you may have prevented 90% of the attacks that did not happen, you know, I'm just saying. But the 10% that you did not manage to stop, you know, explains the feeling of the Nigerian people to say that, look, this thing is going on, we're not protected, we are not properly defended. And it goes back to what I said, that, look, there has to be a greater demonstration of our will as a people to confront these challenges. You know, and we must identify them correctly. We must all agree about what is happening. I think we've agreed that what is happening in the Northwest is banditry. What is happening in the Northeast is terrorism. You know, we need to properly designate the groups in that way. But I don't think we have agreed that what is happening in Northwest and North Central. I think we are still somehow almost cavalier, saying that, well, yeah, you know, no, we need to also identify that.
We need to define clearly.
We need to define clearly, because the governor has come out to say that it's a genocide. The governor is an official of government, an elected official of government. These things have international dimension. There is the International Criminal Court that has the powers, you know, to go after crimes against humanity. Genocide is one of it. And one of the provisos of the International Criminal Court is that when the national legal system has failed, or when you will lack the political will to go after these things. So if you hear the stories of what is happening in Benue and Plateau State, people are screaming blue murder. Governor said it is genocide. So we need to pay attention to that and deal with it. And lastly, our military needs to do more. They are doing very well. I mean, the military is one of the most disciplined, properly organized. You know, when you meet some of those guys, you will be impressed the level of their training and exposure. But we are not doing enough yet. We're not doing enough yet. You know, I see that one of the things that the minister said was to say that, no, look, we have more ammunition. We have more. Our weaponry is stronger than the enemies. Yeah, you know. But Senator Ndume said, you know, few months ago, you know, that we need like 1,000 MRAPs. You know, why aren't we having that? You know, we need to give the military, the political leaders, and I think the president needs to give the military a very unequivocal order to say that, look, I want these things to be done with. And I believe we can do it. We need that kind of very unequivocal, you know, instruction to say, let's sort this problem. And we can as a people. We have the military, but we must equip them. And we must let them know that this is what we want, end this thing. I think there's still a little bit of, we're not really sure whether we really want to. We really need to, especially in the North Central.
Well, Mr. Akande, just yesterday we interviewed a former senator representing Kaduna Central, Shehu Sani, on our program Politics Today, where he was saying, look, he is tired of just talk without action. And over time, and some other people have also said, look, it's been quite a while that a good number of people have spoken and spoken and spoken about all of these whole insecurity issues, and it would seem like it continues unabated. Now, on the one hand, there are those who have spoken to the influence of politics and politicking in the spate of insecurity. On the other hand, there are those who have pointed out the role of poverty, of unemployment, and other social inequities as being responsible for these insecurity issues. Do you think, given all of these facts, that we still need to have a security summit when it will seem like what to do is right there before us? We just don't seem to be doing them yet.
Yeah, thank you, Ayo. I think to the extent that having an ongoing conversation, about an ongoing problem is useful. To that extent, yes, we could have I'm saying essentially that having a conversation, having a dialogue about this problem is not a bad thing. But where Senator Sonny is correct is if all we are doing is just having those conversations and we are not ramping up, actions on the ground, then it's a waste of time. So that's how I come into it. That yes, we need to keep talking to ourselves because we have not been able to solve these problems in a very significant way. We are stepping up. There's no doubt about that. We are equipping the military as much as possible. There seems to be more that we can do. In terms of also understanding the nexus between poverty and insecurity, there's a lot more that we can do to close the gap of poverty. So there are still a lot of things that we need to have conversations with ourselves on. No doubt about that. But Senator Sonny is correct to say that, look, the greater thing, the immediate concern of Nigerians is to nip this thing, where I think that's gone beyond nipping the bud, because is to actually crush this onslaughts and offenses against our people, be it in the Northeast, be it in the Northwest, be it in the North Central. And another point that one should add is that there is a perception, and this has been going on for a long time, there's a perception of injustice in many of these things. There are victims who have seen that the system is not giving them any kind of redress. And if you dig deep, for instance, into what is happening in the North Central, you get a lot of this kind of feedback that they feel that they are not being given justice. And there's also the question of the relief for the victims. It's as if the relief is not sufficient, to try and take care of people that have been displaced and all of that. There's still a lot of work. So there are things that we need to call attention to when we sit down to have a conversation, but we need to ramp up what is happening on the ground. Why don't we have a situation after we've been dealing? I mean, the APC government now, since 2015, even if we just take it far from that place, we have not significantly increased the numbers of our troops on the ground, whether it's in military or in the police. It's taking us too long to even do that. So yes, there are issues to talk about, but we better do more of action. I agree with Senator Sonny in that wise.
Well, in terms of doing more of action, Mr. Akande, one would wonder then what the role of the governors should be. We hear and see of commissioning of this infrastructure, commissioning of that infrastructure, but one wonders how we can actually scale all of that into the human capital development of the people so that they are not they are not lured into activities, or rather what one can call anti-state activities. Is there anything we can that the governors can advise themselves among themselves to do? All insecurity we hear is local. Shouldn't all insecurity solutions also be local?
Well, a significant portion, and thank you for that question, Ayo. A significant portion of the solution ought to be local. For instance, when we're talking about the relief, yes, you know, we have NEMA, the federal agency, but a governor of a state where your people have been displaced, you shouldn't be just waiting for what NEMA is going to do. NEMA should do its job, no doubt, but you can take care of your people. You can provide relief materials. You can ensure that they have a place to put their heads after they've been displaced. So that is one area. And then in the area of human capital development, it is entirely, completely up to the governors. And we've said this and we have to say it over and over again. You know, education, healthcare, the governors ought to and they need to do a lot more. And you will find out that if you take care of those two things, education and health and hard agriculture, you will be able to get a lot of people out of the poverty bracket and then out from where they can be recruited for crimes and all of those stuff. Most of our governors, many of our governors are not doing enough in the area of human capital development. I mean, a recent example is you have the Minister of Education saying that, look, these UBEC funds, I have over 200 billion that governors have not been taking since 2020. Can you imagine that? Since 2020, you know, I mean, when I calculated the figures, it came close to 300 billion naira that is available for education, to build schools, to train teachers, to pay teachers better, you know, to build classrooms. We have a situation where pupils are sitting on the floor, outside, you know, under the shade to be educated. No infrastructure, no tables, no chairs, no textbooks. The teachers are poorly paid. And the federal government is screaming, you know, under this new minister, said that, look, 300 billion naira is here, come and take it. And many of the governors are saying, no, we don't have the counterpart funding. But they have the funding to do infrastructure. They have the funding to do all of these, you know, big, you know, buildings all over the place, which is not entirely bad. But you cannot say that you don't have money to collect, you know, federal matching funds to transform health and education. So you are right. The governors have a lot of role to play in all of these things, and they need to step up.
And week in, week out, we talk about, you know, the roles that governors need to play. Because no matter what it is that we're discussing, every time you always emphasize the role that governors need to play. But, you know, if someone will ask, what role do you think governors need to play in terms of institutions working? And people have talked about, you know, the general state of the rule of law in our country. And this one of the examples that they use. And when these issues usually start, they might start as small issues that we don't really, you know, take note of. Take, for instance, NSARS, when you started to canvass that, you know, police brutality was becoming unbearable, especially that of the Special Anti-Robbery Squad. And now there's another protest now around the release of another popular social media influencer who, by the way, was released yesterday, very dark man, he's popularly known as. But it raises questions, fundamental questions about, you know, the state of the rule of law. Because people will say, how is it possible that somebody is just taken away, you know, ostensibly by security agencies? This time around, we understand it was the EFCC, and no charge was brought against the gentleman.
Right. So two things that I'd like to address. So governors have a lot of role to play in rule of law, and I'll give you an example. So while I was working with the former vice president, he was particularly concerned about the issue of justice, you know, and he says to me that, look, if justice is not the cornerstone of governance, it's a complete waste of time. Because if people don't see justice, they don't care what else you are doing. And it's so correct. So when we were trying to, sort out the issues of insecurity, especially in the middle, in North Central, another part of the country, it turns out that a lot of the people that are arrested for these attacks, so-called then communal clashes, they will be released. They arrest them today. Somebody will call the DPO, will say, well, I have a call, to release this guy from all of the stuff. So the vice president then said that, look, he needs to talk to the attorney generals in the states that, look, these are crimes that are within the legal ramifications of a state. You have to go after them, as attorney general, you must be the one driving this thing. A lot of that is not happening. A lot of people are just sitting down and saying, look, you know what, I'm not the one that is going to be the one to be chest out, and stick my neck.
I'm not going to be the hero.
Exactly. So there is a lot of that is going on, and it's at the state level.
The second part, very quickly.
Yeah, the second part, about, very dark man is that it tells you where we have dropped as a people, that very dark man has become the oasis of people who seek justice in the system but can't find it. It's terrible that it is very dark man that has become where people see hope. It tells you what has happened to our law enforcement agencies. And I know in EFCC that you have a gentleman, the chairman, Mr. Akande, excellent. He knows what he's doing. But the public affairs of EFCC is below par. You cannot go and arrest a very dark man and leave it to people to fill the vacuum as to why. The basic thing about public communication is that you must be in front of the news. If you're going to pick a very dark man, you must be the one to tell us, we have picked him for this and this and this. That way, you control the narrative. You don't go and pick very dark man and then leave out the information. And some people will make it up. Oh, they're not giving him food. Oh, they're beating him up. Which turns out to be false. Nobody was beating him up. He was getting the food. But the people did not. The EFCC public affairs people did not put out the information. So it comes back to what I said. That very dark man, because of this kind of inefficiencies in our system, has become the oasis of justice. It's so sad.
Well, Mr. Akande, this is currently where we are. It's not a very bright place to end it, but what is your own take on this? Thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you, Mark.
Mr. Akande is a former presidential aide.